everybody, my name is Rachel and welcome to my weekly wrap-up of September 20th, 2015, wherein I tell you about all the things I read in the past week and some of the things I tried to read and didn't quite make it. We'll get to that in a minute. I'm also drinking tea this morning. This is the Earl Grey that Chris sent me. It also has vanilla bean in it along with the bergamot, and it's really good, so I decided to make it in my teapot, my English tea set that my mom gave me. This past week, I DNF'd two books. The first one was Artemis Awakening by Jane Lindskold. I picked this up on a whim from the library because I thought the cover looked interesting and the blurb on the inside promised some science fiction-y adventures with discovering a lost planet and the people that live there. And then I started reading it and it just was not what I thought it was. It was about rediscovering a planet that had been lost and the people that live there, but it felt much more like fantasy, including people being like spirit bonded with animals, and it promised a love triangle in the first 50 pages, so I just decided not to read it. It wasn't bad, it was just not what I wanted to read. The other book that I DNF'd was Dark Eden by Chris Beckett. I did not like this book. I am not going to sugarcoat this. I did not like this. It was boring. I hated the writing style with all the repeated adjectives for emphasis. It was so ridiculous and childish feeling. I didn't like the characters. The main character, John Red Lantern, is a 15-year-old boy. He felt malicious instead of being like a hero, and the sexual content is so weird. It was gross, it felt indecent and kind of obscene. It was a bunch of inbred, incestuous people having sex all the time. It managed to be wrong without being explicit. It just gave me the willies. I felt gross while reading it. I don't recommend this one. This is also a story about people on a planet that they've been forgotten or lost. Apparently some humans came from Earth, two of them stayed, and then they had a bunch of children, and then they literally had children with their children, and then children with their grandchildren, and all these people are brothers, sisters, and cousins, and they're inbred, and it shows. Oh, and I'm not even talking that much about the sexual content, am I? I did not like this. I made it 170 some odd pages into it, and then I realized I was going to become even more furious as it was promising to do some things with talking about women in a certain way, and I was just like, nope. I don't want to read a story where it's all about slippy, slidey sex and teenagers having babies and stillborn children and women being baby factories. No. Moving on from that, the first thing that I finished this week, which I actually loved, was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is her debut novel. It is science fiction, and I did a separate review on this, so if you want to know what it's about and what I loved about it, what I thought about it, then go watch that. The next thing that I finished was The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell. This is like a collection of 6 stories or novellas told from different perspectives of people who meet this woman named Holly Sykes over the years. It spans this woman's entire lifetime. The first and the last novellas are told from Holly Sykes's viewpoint, and the middle 4 are just the people that she meets and gets to know in her lifetime. And her life intersects with some magical, supernatural people and like these 2 warring factions that involve things like being able to see with your third eye and all of that. It sounds kind of weird. I feel like the magical element of this book could have been a lot more to better explain how the magic worked, but I don't think that's probably what David Mitchell wanted to do with it. I guess I'm saying is that it felt more like a literary fiction novel to me than an SFF work, and I wanted it to be way more like a fantasy book, and it wasn't. So that's just my preferences right there. I struggled with this pretty much the entire way through because I don't think David Mitchell's writing is for me. It's like I can get through it, but it's not the most enjoyable thing for me to read. My biggest problem with the first half is that I didn't like a lot of the perspectives. I didn't like 15-year-old Holly Sykes. I hated Hugo Lamb, and I thought Crispin Hershey was pretty awful. But the final two are from the perspectives of Marinus and the 70-year-old or something Holly Sykes, and I liked their voices a lot more. There's just more maturity there. I'm not really sure how I feel about the story though. Like, on their own, the individual stories were quite interesting. If you just treat them as individual stories, I think I would have enjoyed them more like that. Put together into a longer narrative, I was kind of scratching my head about what the point the story arc was supposed to be, especially with the way that it ended with the final Holly Sykes part and the world going to hell. I was like, what? How did we get here? I do want to try reading Cloud Atlas, so I'm going to give David Mitchell one more shot. But if you think there's some other book that he's written that would suit me better, if you know my reading taste a little bit, then feel free to recommend that. Next, I read Orsinian Tales by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a collection of short fiction, and it all centers around a fictional Central European country called Orsinia. I really liked this. This is more literary, mainstream short fiction, so this is my recommendation. If you want to try reading Le Guin's non-SFF work, then try finding this collection or something that has one of the Orsinian stories in it. They are pretty much the only literary fiction stories I really like by her, so I would highly recommend them. And then, the book that made me cry like a little baby was The Shepherd's Crown by Terry Pratchett. This is the final Discworld novel, as well as the fifth and final Tiffany Aching book. Tiffany Aching is like a YA subseries in Discworld, though I don't think it's really YA-ish. People of all ages can read and enjoy all Discworld books, IMO. Because it is the final book, I'm not going to go into the story very much. It does have a major character death in the first 30 pages. One of my absolute favorite characters in literature dies, and their death leaves a gap that elves take advantage of to come back once more into Discworld. They're really evil, and Tiffany Aching, the witches, and their friends must defend Discworld against elves. The most important thing to me to say, I guess, is that this is not a finished book. There's an afterword that tells you it was actually unfinished at the time that Terry Pratchett passed away, in that it was not filled in and polished to Pratchett's standards, really, and you can tell that when you're reading. It's a bit stretched in some parts. It could have been fleshed out. I thought especially near the end, the pacing was a bit too fast. Things just wrapped up a bit too quickly. There could have been more said near the end. But I would much rather have an unfinished, unpolished Terry Pratchett novel than one that somebody else came by and filled in everything. I want it to be just Terry Pratchett. I'm sure that's had help from editors and his family and everything, but there's nobody else credited as like finishing the book, which, you know, I've read things like that, like Diana Wynne Jones's last book, The Islands of Chaldea, was massively finished by her sister, who did a very good job, but I'm glad that they didn't try to do that with this book. It feels like a Discworld book, though. It captures that feeling of being in Discworld and being in Tiffany Aching's world, and so you see so many characters for the final time. It was really good. I definitely recommend it. Please don't skip this one. It's sad to read. It's so sad to read, but for its flaws, it's still well worth reading. And the final book that I read this week was Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. This is one of the very famous dystopian, rather anti-utopian stories. I haven't read some of the other ones. I haven't read 1984, for example, so this was kind of new for me. I didn't like it. I don't have much to say about it. It's a world in which people are literally created in bottles, and then they are mind-controlled and drugged for the rest of their lives. They think they're happy, they think that the world is good, but you know that it's actually not good. And one of the characters, Bernard, he has this strange urge to break out of this, to go find something else. He's starting to question the system a little bit, and he goes to a reserve where savages still live, people outside of the system, and it makes him question more. And then a white man, he was raised in like a Native American society, comes back with him to the rest of the world, and this doesn't go very well. It's kind of a depressing suicidal ending. Because it's old, it has some ideas about medicine and science and like hypnotic control that are frankly ludicrous today. So you take that with a grain of salt, but even then, while I could see what he was trying to do with some of this stuff, it just didn't jive with me very well. So I didn't like it. I really don't have much to say about this. I need to read 1984, but I hope that is better than Brave New World. That is everything that I read this past week. I had some good things, I had some bad things. Hopefully next week is better. If you've read any of these, please feel free to comment down below and talk to me, and I will talk at you again in my next video. Bye.